Very often when we think about burnout, we think of it very dramatically, the big collapse where we lose motivation and we're missing deadlines and we want to quit our job. I have seen that happen. I've actually witnessed that kind of burnout with my own eyes. But that's not how I experienced it, and that's not how many of the artists I've spoken to have experienced it either. In fact, more often than not, it happens very quietly. You're still productive, you're still growing, you're still showing up on time. However, something is slowly but surely creeping up on you. And it happens so quietly, sometimes you don't even know that it's happening. And that's what I want to talk about today. To start off, however, I think it's very important to mention the fact that my goal today is to help you to become more self-aware, to notice certain signs, red flags, if they're happening, so that you can, if necessary, go and speak to a professional to help you sort these things out. So what was the thing that I felt? What was the thing that I experienced when I started to eventually realize that I was starting to burn out? The process of burnout was starting to happen to me. I think the first thing that hit me was a constant state of preoccupation, a constant state of overwhelm, where from the moment I woke up in the morning to the moment I went to bed at night, I always had something to, quote, worry about. I was worried about everything. I was worried about work. I was worried about finances. I was worried about my car. I was worried about my home. I was worried about my kids. I was worried about my partner. I was worried about bloody everything. And it was this constant feeling like I needed to stay on top of it or things would start to fall apart. And how this manifested in me, and I've heard a lot of people describe it the same way, that my adrenals, my hormones were so out of whack from being in this constant state of preoccupation over weeks and months and even years, was this constant feeling like I needed to calm my system down. And that very often manifests as sighing or heavy breathing. So I would wake within 20, 30 minutes of waking up in the morning. I didn't even have my morning coffee yet. And I would be going all the time. That's a very good sign, especially as things really start to get out of hand. This constant feeling of sighing, this constant feeling like I can't calm my system down. Sighing is a way of you trying to regulate yourself. It's a sign of trying to calm yourself down. And if you reach that point where you're sighing all day, every day, you're on this constant heavy breathing all the time, then that's a sign for you to step back and reanalyze your situation. Apart from that, how did I feel? I started to feel a little bit performative in my life. I started to feel emotionally disconnected from what was happening in my life to a certain degree, not to any serious degree, but enough for me to notice that just being there, being emotionally present, being emotionally available, and feeling like I'm there as well, not just acting like I'm there, became more and more of a challenge for me. Because my job as a teacher, my job as a father, as a partner, is to be there emotionally present for people. And when you're in a state, when you live a life where you're always emotionally there for people, when you feel you can't, or you feel like that emotional self is not being 100% authentic because you're kind of like just going, yeah, okay, I'm there. Yeah, okay, I'm listening. And you're emotionally kind of not clicking into that mode as easily as you did before, because that's something that should come naturally to you. That to me was a sign that I'm not keeping up with something here, that there's a lot of baggage that I haven't resorted yet. And that's finding itself into my day-to-day life. Another very common sign of burnout as well is a feeling of a difficulty with emotional regulation. I tend to consider myself somebody who handles stress well. You know, when people are in panic modes, or if there's a fire, or if there's an emergency, or things like that, I'm generally somebody who can keep his head on straight and stay calm and handle it. But the opposite was happening when I started to burn out. I started to feel like I was a firecracker ready to go off. I would get irritated with the simplest things, or my stress level would shoot up really fast for something that would normally I would consider completely trivial. Somebody would do something to irritate me and I would completely feel like, oh God, I'd feel angry, or I'd feel overwhelmed, or I'd feel like I wanted to cry. So my emotions were really going through this whole roller coaster ride, and I was not in control of the roller coaster. I think most importantly, these feelings didn't just hit me all of a sudden. It was like the frog in boiling water type of syndrome. It was slowly percolating, was slowly starting to erode away at me until I, at a certain point, realized that those feelings were so strong and so constant. I realized what I had been neglecting over all that time, that the things had allowed to slowly wear away at me. until it became overwhelming. I think that's very important for you to pay attention to. Pay attention to your emotions, because burnout doesn't just show up all of a sudden. You can miss it. It can creep up on you. So it's very important to reassess your life and your feelings, I would say, every day. Just keep tabs on your emotional self from day to day. The other thing that I found that was very important to start considering in my life, since I had so many things that I was responsible for, both professionally and personally, was the cognitive overload side of things. How many things was I worrying about? How many things should I be worrying about? What is my immediate responsibility? And furthermore, for the things that are my responsibility, how do I reduce that friction in my life? I find that very often we tend to, we're habit-based creatures. And I would argue that I'm a very habit-focused person. I like to have that routine every day to make everything manageable. And because I'm a work in progress, I don't nail things on the first shot. And I found that over the years, the things that I've learned to prioritize more and more as my professional demand increases, as my personal life increases, is how to streamline things and how to minimize the load, how to reduce the friction between A and B as much as possible. And furthermore, how to prioritize things. Do I need to worry about that today, or can I put that off to tomorrow? What's an immediate emergency and what can be put off until later? Furthermore, what's not my problem at all? When you're in a state of overwhelm, very often it's very difficult to distinguish what's your actual responsibility and what's other people's business. And trust that other people have the ability to be able to handle their own things and not feel like you have to kind of micromanage everything and everybody. No, let people handle their own business and you handle your own. And for the things that I do handle, when it comes to how you set yourself up, how you prepare your work, how do you practice every day, that routine that you have, how long it takes for you to get dressed, how long it takes for you to get to work, etc. How do I make that process as easy as possible? How do I reduce that friction? How do I get from point A to point B as fast as possible? Because a lot of that, if you put a little bit of effort off hours when you're not working, to make that process of getting started easier, you can jump into work very quickly. And all of those extra bits of weight that came with it don't need to be there. Here's another very important thing to consider. Uncertainty can be very stressful. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have health anxiety. Health anxiety means you're worried about something about your health. It's like, oh, am I getting heart palpitations? Oh, why are my hands going numb? What does that mean? Am I having a heart attack? Do I have this emotional instability? Blah, 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 blah. You're constantly worrying about something to do with your health. I have found that whenever I was concerned or worried that something was wrong with me, that was far more stressful than actually finding out that something was wrong. I spent years of my life feeling sick, having bad digestion, feeling like I was always sick to my stomach, feeling tired all the time, feeling like my body was falling apart, and I didn't know what the hell was going on for years. Until one day, I asked a doctor to check my thyroid, and sure as shit, I had a very poorly functioning thyroid. You'd think that finding out that I had hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, you'd think that finding that out would be like, oh crap, well, my life sucks now. No, I was elated to find out. I was overjoyed to find out. I was like, now I know what the problem was. Now I know how to treat the problem. And I went and I got my prescription for Synthroid and my health improved over time. And the same thing applies to your life. There were certain emotional states, there's certain moments in my life where I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what the problem was. And furthermore, I didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't know if it was serious or if it wasn't, be it my health, be it my work, be it whatever the situation. And the same thing applies to your life. If you feel like something's off and you're worried about what that quote could mean, go to a doctor, find out. Go to a therapist, go to a doctor, go to a counselor, because a doctor can let you know if they're compassionate and they do their job well, can let you know, they can assess you, they can test you, they can take your concerns seriously and say, okay, tell me what's up, tell me how you feel. And then they can check you, they can get those blood tests, they can ask you questions about your emotional self, about the state of your life, etc. And they can let you know if it's something that needs to be diagnosed, or if it's you're just overwhelmed and you're stressed and you need to take a break and start to reassess your situation. I can't stress enough, knowing what something is, knowing what the problem is, good or bad, is generally a better state to be in. I love knowing how my brain works. I love knowing how my body works. I'm not disappointed that I have hypothyroidism. I'm happy that I know what my issues are and how to better take care of myself. In fact, if I could say anything, I think that knowing that I have hypothyroidism has pushed me and encouraged me to be more mindful of my health, to keep going to the gym, to watch what I'm eating, to not let myself go. I think that it's kept me healthier, because if everything is kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I just go on about life like everything's fine, then little things can creep up on you sometimes. And I like the fact that I need to be more self-aware. I feel like I've benefited from my diagnosis, not the other way around. Knowledge is power. If you feel overwhelmed with life and you feel like you're going through a lot of anxiety and stress, go see your doctor. But if you go see your doctor and your doctor says it's fine, and you're still stressed about your art career, then it might be time for you to go speak to an art teacher. Talk to me, talk to another professional, and you'll realize that, okay, this was unhealthy stress that I needed to speak to a therapist about. But this other stress is professional. This other stress is technical. It's fundamental. And this is something that an art teacher can help you with. And by having that clarity in your life, you know what parts of your life need to be handled in different ways. And once you have that knowledge yourself, you can handle it yourself and recognize the signs and symptoms. You become more self-aware. I'm going to say something else that I've said many, many times on my channel, but I can't stress enough because it's so important. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're suffering, it's always going to be worse if you're doing so in isolation, if you're doing it alone. By keeping it to yourself, by not wanting to, quote, worry other people with your problems, you are not helping the situation. Okay? Now, of course, being a whiner, like they say in Polish, a histericzka, like somebody who just whines and complains about everything every day, and that the sky's falling 10 times a day, at a certain point, no, people are going to get tired of you and get annoyed. In that case, go see a doctor. Your family's not going to help you. A doctor's going to help you with that. But when you're going through stuff and you're unsure what the problem is and how to address the problem, whatever you do, don't just sit there and suffer in silence. Go and speak to people. The moment that you start to have clarity, stress starts to leave your body. The moment I kind of could see myself, the moment I could gain clarity on my situation, this is one of the reasons why I journal all the time too. It gives me a moment of clarity every day. This is why I meditate every day. It gives me a moment of clarity every day where I can self-reflect. Self-reflection is incredibly powerful. And the moment you start to gain that clarity, the moment you can see what the problem is and you can assess what the problem is and you can find a workaround for that problem, that stress starts to take care of itself. But remember, stress doesn't just leave the body by itself. It's not like a pressure meter that slowly goes down naturally. Okay, so avoiding a problem when it's a chronic problem is not going to make the problem go away. It's just going to distract yourself for a little while. Stress needs to be addressed. Stress needs to be purged from the body actively. Removing stress is an activity, but it's not an activity that should overwhelm you. It should reduce overwhelm. No matter what you're going through in life, I think it's extremely important to remember something. Burnout is not a sign of weakness. Burnout, or any emotional distress that you're feeling in your life, physical or emotional, is your body trying to talk to you. Never underestimate the power of Mother Nature. She is a very, very powerful teacher. And as the Stoics always say, when life is difficult, it's not because life sucks. It's because life has partnered you up with a great sparring partner. You've gotten into the ring with a sparring partner who's a little bit tougher than you. And in order for you to overcome that challenge, you need to become more self-aware, you need to become wiser, and you need to learn how to not burn out all your energy, or you're going to get knocked out in the second round, right? Remember that life is a marathon, not a sprint. So you need to learn how to manage your energy, manage your thoughts, manage your life in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. Now, I realized when I published last week's video, I forgot the Polish phrase of the week because I'm learning Polish as a total amateur and I'm dragging you along the ride with me. But to make up for it, this week's Polish phrase of the week does not come from me. It comes from an alumni of Lucid Pixel, one of my former students, and a dear friend and a passionate listener on our channel, Katarzyna Owczarz. And this week's Polish phrase is wypalenie to sygnat, nie porażka, which means burnout is a sign, not a failure. Isn't that lovely? So a big thank you to Katarzyna for sharing that phrase with us today. You can write it down in the comments below. And of course, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.